Kei te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. In Haere nei, there is less than 6 hours of oxygen left on the missing Titan sub. A special deep-sea robot's reached the site, but if they find the missing vessel, is a rescue even possible? We talked to an ocean explorer and a good friend of one of those on board. The axe is hanging over secondary teacher training at Victoria University, despite there being a teacher shortage. Tairāwhiti is awash with heavy rain again. The Mayor is live. Children's Minister Kelvin Davis is called out for name-calling, not in the playground, in Parliament. In Aotearoa, we're not the only ones asking, why you gotta be so mean, Tay-Tay? You can watch us live on the RNZ website, Facebook and Freeview Channel 50.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Ahi Marie. Good afternoon, I'm Evie Ashton. Tairāwhiti Civil Defence is warning rivers are rising and significant flooding is expected in the area. Dangerous river conditions are expected with large amounts of rain to fall in coming days. Hamish Cardwell has more.
Civil Defence says people in low-lying areas should not wait for official evacuations. They should leave if they feel unsafe. Residents in the settlement of Tikaraka have been told they should leave their homes before it gets dark. House of Breakthrough and Tupoho or Rauri Marae are open as evacuation centres. State Highway 35 around the Cape from Gisborne to Ruatoria is now closed, as is the inland route State Highway 2 between Ormond and Matawai. State Highway 2 connecting Napier and Gisborne will close at 5 o'clock this evening at Wairoa. Tairāwhiti Gisborne is at the highest weather warning level. Up to 300 millimetres could fall around Tolaga Bay. Up to 150 millimetres could fall in other parts of the region on top of what has already fallen.
Meanwhile, Hawke's Bay Civil Defence says while some roads are flooded in parts of the region and rivers have risen, evacuations aren't on the cards. Hawke's Bay is being hit by another deluge and remains under a heavy rain warning until Sunday. Civil Defence Controller Ian MacDonald says his team is well prepared and there's no cause for concern yet. A man who was supposed to be on the submersible missing at sea is outlining problems he saw with the mission. 5 people are lost off the coast of Canada after the Titan sub lost contact with its support vessel. The submersible is expected to run out of oxygen sometime tonight. Chris Brown, who was also friends with one of the men on board, told CNN he pulled out due to safety issues.
It became obvious to me that they didn't seem to want to get certification, that they were going to call this an experimental sub and not certify it for one dive, let alone multiple dives. That was outside of my risk envelope. Also, some of the parts that were being used seemed to me to be off the shelf, maybe not ideal for the situation.
Chris Brown says the vessel has to be opened from the outside, which he considered another design flaw. A Wellington City Councillor says vape retailers are rushing to open new locations ahead of a ban limiting their proximity to schools and marae. Parents and teachers in the Wellington suburb of Strathmore are outraged to learn of the Shosha chain's plans to open near schools. Terry O'Neill says the positioning of the store is predatory and not unique to Strathmore.
We've certainly seen a significant uptake in Shosha and specialist vaping stores pop up all over the city. Had legislation been a bit quicker, we wouldn't be having this problem where a vape shop is well within 300 metres of a school premises.
Terry O'Neill wants vape retailers to engage with the community and authorities to approve vape and tobacco store locations. Shosha hasn't responded to requests for comment. A major computer system outage at hospitals in the Wellington region today has forced the cancellation of some outpatient appointments, including for cancer. Te Whatu Ora says the faults hit hospitals across Wellington, Porirua, Hutt Valley and Wairarapa. Ruth Hill reports.
Te Whatu Ora says the outage, which was caused by computer servers overheating, affected patient records, clinical notes, laboratory results, payroll, some swipe access cards and the application that lets staff work remotely. Services across Wellington, Porirua, Hutt Valley and Wairarapa were fully restored by mid-afternoon, but it's caused ongoing delays. A spokesperson says about 80 Wellington patients with appointments in cancer and outpatients have had to be rescheduled. The hospital will run extra evening and weekend sessions for cancer patients to catch up.
To sport now, and veteran All Black lock Sam Whitelock's been named in the Crusaders' starting lineup for Saturday's Super Rugby final against the Chiefs. Although he's not guaranteed to start, coach Scott Robertson concedes Whitelock's Achilles injury could still force him out of what would be his last match for the franchise as he'll move to France after the World Cup.
We're giving him day to day, so we'll take it right to the warm up for him. Like, he's trained extremely well, done everything all week, and everything's strong, everything's good. But we're just mindful that what we've appeared is we could not be there. We're just giving him every opportunity, and it's Sam's call in the end.
Whitelock is the only change to Crusaders' starting lineup from the semi-final win over the Blues. The Chiefs have also made just one change to their starting lineup, with Pitagas Soakula coming in at blindside flanker. Golfer Lydia Ko is hoping her game will come together ahead of tomorrow morning's PGA Championship in New Jersey. Heading into the second major of the year, the world number 3's endured mixed recent form, failing to make the cut at her most recent event.
I haven't been playing the best golf leading up to this event, but in saying that, I feel like my scores haven't been the exact reflection of how I've been playing, so hopefully it's not too far away.
And Brendan McCullum's promising England will go even harder at Australia in next week's second Ashes cricket test at Lord's after narrowly losing the opener. The loss is only England's third in 14 tests since McCullum took up the coaching reins. That's the news.
Property sales on the rise.
We've got to get on with life. So we're starting to see people re-enter the market, and I think it's just around comfort levels more than anything.
Teachers seek a fast resolution.
We've had assurances from the Minister that this will be taken to Cabinet. It'll be great to hear the Prime Minister offer that support as well.
And devastation for fans of Taylor Swift.
I've been trying to summarise how I feel, and I think it's just gutted. It was like, oh, okay, I guess we're going to be fighting with Australian Swifties to try and get these tickets.
Shake it off. Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
And we're funded through New Zealand On Air. You're with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Friday. A red warning is in force for Gisborne due to a prolonged period of rain. For Northland, Auckland, Coromandel, Bay of Plenty, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay. Periods of rain or showers, heavy at times with some thunderstorms. Waikato, Waitomo and the Central High Country. Occasional rain, possibly heavy. Taranaki to Wellington, mostly cloudy with a few showers. Waded Upper, also Marlborough and Nelson. Periods of rain with some heavy falls about eastern Marlborough. Bulla and Westland, mainly fine, but a few spots of rain about Bulla. Canterbury, North Otago and Dunedin, cloudy about the coast and plains, with showers turning to rain tomorrow. Fine spells elsewhere, becoming cloudy tomorrow evening with scattered showers developing. Central Otago, Clutha and Southland, also Fiordland, partly cloudy with areas of valley fog. Isolated showers about Fiordland and the south coast, clearing tomorrow morning, and Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, the chance of a shower. It's 7 minutes past 5. I'll have traffic news and headlines for you at about 20 past 5.
Nā mihi, Evie. Tēnā koutou katoa, no mai, haere mai, ki Checkpoint te tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. Right now, the missing Titan sub has less than 6 hours of oxygen left. The vessel with 5 people on board lost contact with its support ship as it descended to the Titanic wreckage off the coast of Canada on Sunday evening. The passengers, a father and son from one of Pakistan's wealthiest families, a billionaire adventurer, a renowned Titanic expert and the CEO of the company leading the expedition, Ocean Gate, are on board. Searchers earlier reported hearing banging sounds at regular intervals, but say an analysis of the noises is inconclusive. A French deep-sea robot capable of descending to a depth well below even the Titanic wreck has now been deployed. The BBC's John Sudworth has more on the international search operation.
Every available asset is being thrown at one of the most difficult sea searches ever undertaken, around 400 miles from the nearest point of land. It's been 3 days since the Titan vanished without a trace. But a glimmer of hope has come from the US Coast Guard with the confirmation that banging noises have been detected in the search area.
When you're in the middle of a search and rescue case, you always have hope. That's why we're doing what we do. With respect to the noises specifically, we don't know what they are, to be frank with you. The good news is, what I can tell you is we're searching in the area where the noises were detected, and we'll continue to do so.
With the sub lost in water more than 2 miles deep, the search aircraft have been dropping sonar buoys into the water. They either listen for sounds produced by propellers and machinery, which could also include the crew making noise, or they can use active detection by bouncing a sonar ping off the surface of the vessel and listening for a returning echo. On board the missing sub are 3 British citizens, billionaire explorer Hamish Harding and businessman Shahzada Dawood and his teenage son Suleiman.
Shahzada is someone who's got an uncommon zest for life. He has a real sense of adventure. He has a real sense of exploration. In fact, he has a passion for exploration.
Also on board are the US captain Stockton Rush and an experienced French Navy diver, Paul-Henri Nagiole, who experts say would know what to do to be found.
The protocol for trying to alert searching forces, and that is, in the Navy anyway, is that on the hour and the half hour, you bang like hell for 3 minutes.
The Titan has no escape hatch and its occupants are bolted in, so even if it has managed to surface, finding it within the time limit is critical. If they are still trapped underwater, this deep-sea robot submersible on board a French research ship seems to offer the best hope at present of reaching them. But the scale of the task is clear for all involved. Sean Leet is the co-founder of the company that owns the sub's mothership, the Polar Prince.
We are very aware of the time sensitivity around this mission. Our crews and onshore team are experts in their fields and will continue to support this effort in every way we can. We remain focused on contributing to the search for the Titan crew and continue to hold out hope that they will be located and brought home safely.
It's being described as the deepest search and rescue mission ever attempted. First, the teams have to find the Titan, and if they do, somehow get the men trapped inside to safety.
Now, I spoke with oceanographer and deep-sea explorer Dr David Gallo, who is a close friend of one of the men on board and co-led an expedition to create the first map of the Titanic on the ocean floor. He told me if searchers are lucky enough to find the Titan in the next few hours, it will take at least 2 hours to winch it to the surface.
So you're looking at a good deal of time. It's not 10 minutes. It's going to be more like several hours to get it up. And that's after you free it from whatever's holding it to the at depth. So maybe a cable that is caught around, and you have to cut the cable. Then you have to figure out how do you hook up the cable, the tow cable. Where do you put it on the submarine? All those things come into play. So, my feeling was that now that they know there are sounds, and it could be the submarine, they need to assume that it is, because we're out of time, and start heading the right kinds of equipment to that spot. Just so in case it really is the sub, you're there already. You don't have to wait for other equipment to come over and get in the water.
What is the temperature down there?
Just above freezing. It's, I would say, 3 Celsius. So just above the freezing point. It's really, the sun's never been there. Let's put it that way. So sunlight's never been there, and that's what makes the oceans warm. And a lot of the water there at that spot comes out of the Arctic, so it's incredibly cold water. And it's incredibly cold inside the sub. There are no heaters in the sub except you're your own heater. And so it gets very uncomfortably cold in a short bit of time.
Oceanographer Dr David Gallo. Now, he has a theory that searchers should be narrowing their search as time runs out, and we'll hear more about that after 6. It is 13 minutes after 5. Kia mau tunu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Cutting secondary school teacher training altogether at Victoria University will have major consequences, with schools already struggling to fill staff shortages, according to a senior lecturer. Entire subjects and 229 full-time equivalent roles could be axed at Victoria University if proposed cuts go ahead. The uni is forecasting a $33 million deficit, meaning numerous courses, including language studies, theatre, design, tech and secondary teacher education, could be for the chop. Margaret Gleason is a senior lecturer at Victoria University School of Education and joins us now. Kia ora, Margaret. This seems counterintuitive, potentially cutting secondary teacher training when we have a severe shortage. Your thoughts?
Oh, te look way, Lisa. Absolutely. It's we're all flabbergasted when we heard the news, and I can't see any positive outcome from this draconian decision.
Why is this course for the chop? Why did they say that this one, well, they can afford to let it go?
I think they feel that they can afford to let it go for financial reasons, because secondary education is notoriously quite expensive to staff, given that there are quite a number of different curriculum areas and specialist teachers for those curriculum areas. So I can see that in that respect it would be a low-hanging fruit for the decision makers about this.
So the course doesn't pay for itself in the sense that the students coming in do not cover the costs of delivering the course?
No, they don't. They don't.
So what are the consequences in your mind if it is cut?
I think the consequences are generational, quite honestly, and I'm not trying to be hysterical about that. But the secondary teacher education program that we have at Te Whanau Akapai is unique in the whole country, in that it's been redesigned about 3 years ago. We're in our third year now. It's been redesigned on kaupapa Māori principles. It adheres to our te tiriti responsibilities, and it contributes to producing teachers who are going to be really good treaty partners when they go out into schools. And that's why I think it has multi-generational effect, because we won't be getting these high quality student teachers that become qualified teachers that we have now. I'm really proud of the teachers that have come through our doors over the past years.
How are you and the other staff feeling about this?
Oh, we're really just shocked. We imagined that there would be some cuts, there would be some reductions in programs, but I don't think any of us anticipated that they would get rid of a whole sector. You know, secondary education. No, I don't know what our schools in Wellington are going to have to say about that, who take our graduates hot off the press. As soon as they're graduated, our schools suck them out.
How many students would you get a year graduating from that course?
Oh, that's a really good question. Do you know what? I'm going to have to guess, Lisa. I would say probably about 60.
Right, and as you say, a sought-after resource right now.
They really, really are. And one of the programs, which is probably the more expensive one, the Master of Teaching and Learning program, where the secondary teachers and primary teachers actually stay in a host school for the entire year. Those particular graduates are really particularly sought after, because they have more or less 1 year of job application, and the schools know who they're getting. But equally...
Margaret, sorry to interrupt, because some people listening will think, okay, so why can't these students just go to another university that offers a secondary teacher course and we still get the same number and we trim costs at Victoria University?
They will, but goodness... Well, I mean, why can't we serve our own area? We are the capital city university. Why can't we sustain this program, which has gone on for decades? I actually wonder, Lisa, whether this is the beginning of the end came when we left Karori and were absorbed into the wider university, because we were a purpose-built establishment like the other colleges of education in the past. And I don't think the particular contribution to society that we offer as teacher educators is really, truly acknowledged by the wider university.
So, Margaret, if the course doesn't pay for itself, yet it has value in your mind,
yes.
What is the government's role here, do you think, if it's in jeopardy?
Well, I'd like to think that the government would step up and try and sustain something of such social value. Obviously, I can't see into the mind of politicians. I know our union representatives are doing their best, and the Vice-Chancellor too, to have conversations with the minister, but from what I can understand, it's on stony ground.
Really appreciate your time this evening, Margaret. Thank you for joining us. That is Margaret Gleason, who's a senior lecturer at Victoria University School of Education. And as she said, secondary school teacher training at the university is in jeopardy as it attempts to make cuts because of a pretty significant budget shortfall. Now, in breaking news, Tairāwhiti Civil Defence has called a state of emergency. Civil Defence says people in low-lying areas should not wait for official evacuations. They should leave if they feel unsafe. Residents in the Te Karaka area have been told they should leave their homes before it gets dark. House of Breakthrough and Te Poho o Rawiri Marae are open as evacuation centres. So just to repeat that, if you have just tuned in, Tairāwhiti Civil Defence has called a state of emergency. They're warning people, residents who feel they are at risk, do not wait to be told to evacuate. The Children's Minister admits he got his tone wrong when using an urgent debate on misconduct allegations at Oranga Tamariki to attack Christopher Luxon. The Prime Minister says Kelvin Davis made yesterday's debate political after repeated interjections from across the House. But National says it's no excuse. Political reporter Giles Dexter has more.
After harrowing revelations of alleged inappropriate sexual behaviour at Oranga Tamariki residences, Parliament went into urgent debate. ACT's Karen Chor, who grew up in state care, pleaded for change.
We need to get this right. We need to take the politics out of this. Put the kids at the front. Work together.
But the Children's Minister couldn't help playing politics. After addressing the steps Oranga Tamariki was taking to respond to the allegations, he pivoted, taking a pot shot at National leader Christopher Luxon for his recent car controversy.
They changed the system, but it failed. Mr. Tesla there. Mr. Tesla is pointing the finger.
The Speaker took Kelvin Davis to task for using a nickname. Mr. Davis apologised, but that did not quell the opposition's fury.
Disgusting, indefensible that the minister responsible took the opportunity to get into the weeds and get into the gutter of political potshots.
The Prime Minister admits Mr. Davis got his tone wrong, but blamed it on heckling from National.
I think he was being subjected to quite a lot of, from what I gather, quite a lot of interjection at the time and was responding to some of that. I think in the process of doing that, he should have taken a more restrained tone.
Christopher Luxon says interjections are no excuse.
Kelvin Davis should focus less on us and actually focus on his number one job, which is making sure that our children in state care, our most vulnerable children, are safe in his care. That's his primary responsibility.
Kelvin Davis today cut a more conciliatory tone.
It is a robust place, and my comments did not reflect the seriousness with which I take the allegations, and we responded to the allegations.
He insists he's still the right man for the job.
When I became the minister, Oranga Tamariki was in the news almost daily, and now, in fact, there was about 3 weeks ago, someone said to me, we never hear about Oranga Tamariki in the news, and that's a sign that things are changing.
Kelvin Davis may use that to pat himself on the back, but any story of inappropriate sexual behaviour at Oranga Tamariki is one story too many.
Giles Dexter reporting there 22 minutes after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Homai o Whakaaro, we would love to hear your feedback. Get in touch about anything you've heard on the program so far. If you are in the Gisborne area and are able to, please tell us what it's like in your part of the Motu. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or the email address checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. It is time for us to go to the headlines. Ko iwi anō tēnei.
Tairāwhiti Civil Defence says a state of emergency has been declared. The region is at the highest weather warning level tonight, with Civil Defence expecting significant flooding. It says people in low-lying areas shouldn't wait for official evacuations and should leave if they feel unsafe. Time is running out for the 5 people on board the submersible missing since Sunday on a dive to the wreck of the Titanic. It's estimated those on board have less than 6 hours of oxygen. A senior Victoria University lecturer says plans to axe its secondary teacher training to help deal with a $33 million deficit will have generational consequences. Margaret Gleason told Checkpoint staff were flabbergasted when they heard the news and staff can't see any positive outcome. A man has been arrested after the death of gang boss Stephen Taiatini in the Bay of Plenty town of Opotiki. The 49-year-old has been charged with attempting to pervert the course of justice. And the Prime Minister says the Minister for Children, Kelvin Davis, got the tone wrong during yesterday's urgent parliamentary debate on the removal of 2 staff from Oranga Tamariki after sexual misconduct allegations. Mr Davis repeatedly yelled Mr Tesla at Nationals leader Christopher Luxon, a jibe at Mr Luxon's refusal to say whether his wife claimed the clean car discount for her electric car. Chris Hipkins says Mr Davis should have been more restrained. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic, because of the flooding, the following roads are now closed. State Highway 2, Napier to Waidoa, and Matawai to Ormond. State Highway 5, Taupo to Eskdale. State Highway 35, Okitu to Ruatoria. In Auckland, the rain's causing slippery, wet conditions, as it is in the Bay of Plenty. A breakdown on State Highway 1 that was partially blocking the left lane northbound just after the Ellerslie-Panmure Highway on-ramp in Auckland was cleared just after 5 o'clock, so about 20 minutes ago, but you may still be experiencing delays. Our next traffic news and headlines are at about 20 to 6.
Ngā mihi, Evie, and if you are just joining us, Tairawhiti Civil Defence has called a state of emergency. Residents are being evacuated from Tikaraka on the outskirts of Gisborne in the face of a rising river and continued heavy rain. The area is currently under a red weather warning, the most severe. Residents who feel they are at risk should evacuate themselves and not wait for an official order to move. Joining us now is Gisborne District Mayor Riet Stoltz. Kia ora, Riet. What has pushed you over the edge into a state of emergency?
Kia ora, Lisa. Well, we have seen those river levels rise quickly. We know everything is already saturated. There's a lot going on, heavy rain. We wanted to make sure we give opportunity to communities to evacuate while there is still some daylight. So we are expecting lots more to come over the next few days. We have had a lot of rain already, and we are trying to be as prepared as possible.
Can you tell us which areas are most at risk right now and what you know about evacuations?
Yes, so for Tikaraka, that community started some self-evacuation around when the Waipawa River was just over 7 metres. It's now way over 8, but at 7.5 it triggered our civil defence evacuation. We are keeping a close eye on the Hikawai catchment north of Tolaga Bay and also the Ormond township. So what we are saying to people, if you feel unsafe, please leave. But we will be watching those river levels and we will be keeping our community up to date.
And where should they go, Riet?
So we have 2 evacuation centres in town. Our Tikaraka community are cut off from town now, so they are evacuating in the Tikaraka area school. In town here, we know that some of the people are evacuating to 2 areas that we've designated for them to go. So we are ready. We just need our community to be alert, and please do not travel if you don't have to travel.
You mentioned the roads. Is it slips or surface water? What are the issues there?
So it's a bit of both. Because everything is so sodden, we are definitely seeing more landslides. There are 60 roads that are currently closed, but earlier in your news bulletin, you stated State Highway 2 as well as State Highway 35 are closed, and that in effect mean Tairawhiti is cut off from the rest of the country. We have lots of local roads closed. We will be closing our unsealed roads to any heavy vehicles overnight as well. So, like I said, please do not travel if you don't have to.
How are residents feeling? I mean, they must have disaster fatigue, surely.
Oh, absolutely. People are anxious. They are tired. We have been in a constant state of response and recovery since the 10th of January. We are trying to fix our broken network. We are trying to reconnect communities. And on top of that, we are trying to deal with Category 2 and Category 3 homes and trying to give people more certainty if they can return. And now on top of that, we're dealing with a civil defence emergency. So I think it's fair to say our community really need a break.
Te Karaka, that got hit really badly last time around, a number of people out of their homes, and now this.
And it's one of our worst affected areas. That community is dealing with so much hurt, financial impacts, emotional impacts, a disconnect from the area that they know and love. So I can understand that it is a very, very tough time for them today, and we are there to support them.
Thank you so much for your time this evening. Best of luck. That is Riette Stoltz, who is the Mayor of the Gisborne district there. They have currently got a civil defence, well, they're in a state of civil defence, red rain warning there, and residents are being asked to move themselves if they feel they are unsafe. Do not wait for an official evacuation order. Sam Whitelock has been named to start for the Crusaders in Saturday's Super Rugby final against the Chiefs. His final appearance for the side, though there's a chance he might not play. The All Blacks lock is heading to French club Pau after this year's World Cup and was hoping to sign off on the field with the team he's played 177 games for. Now, we're joined by sports reporter Felicity Reid. Hi, Felicity. Is this the Achilles thing, is it?
It is the Achilles thing. There has been a little bit of back and forth around Whitelock's availability this week, with Ian Foster, who's the current All Blacks coach, saying that Whitelock wouldn't actually be playing in this final, but the incoming All Blacks coach and current Crusaders coach, Scott Robertson, today named his squad for this final, and Whitelock is in that team. He did concede, though, that he would only give him until warm-up on game day to actually make the call. It would be Sam's call about whether he would actually be playing in this game. As we've noted there, that it has been quite a career that he's had at the Crusaders, and he probably does want to give everything he can to playing in this game, but I guess he's probably got to think about that next step in France as well. And if he does actually take the field, it will be the only change from the Crusaders semi-final win. It was Quinton Strange who was playing at lock in that game. So if Whitelock does take the field, he takes Quinton's spot. And the Chiefs have also opted for consistency for this final. They've made one change from the game against the Brumbies. That's Peter Suakola coming in ahead of new All Blacks Emma Penny-Finau.
OK, let's move on to the Women's Football World Cup. What's going on with ticket sales? Bit sluggish.
Yeah, there is concerns about the sales within New Zealand. A couple of weeks ago, it passed that 1 million tickets sold mark, and that was again going to make it the biggest attended women's event in the world. But 3/4 of those tickets have actually been sold for games in Australia. And that's a little bit of a concern for the organising committee. We did speak with Dave Veitch at the time of that announcement about that milestone ticket sale. He was saying that it would be the population that would suggest that there would be those lopsided sales. But actually, it's now gone to the FIFA's head of women's football, Sarai Barrowman. She's also sort of weighed in on this and said that there needs to be a boost of sales in New Zealand. Again, we can probably see why. In Australia, the Matildas, the Australian national team, they are quite popular. They're kind of the outside favourite to take a win at the tournament as well. So, and to put it in context as well,
what are you politely trying to say, Felicity?
Well, I'm saying that the football ferns are going to be battling to get out of their group, and that the Matildas have got a warm-up game with 40,000 people in Melbourne just a couple of days before the tournament kicks off. So everyone acknowledges it's an uphill battle in New Zealand to get crowds for something like this. As big as this event is, it's going to be kind of hard to get people in for some of those mid-afternoon games against maybe teams that aren't so well known. As we've mentioned a little bit earlier as well, that Dave Veitch didn't want to be getting into giving away tickets just to fill the stands. So I was also speaking with former football fern Maya Jackman, and she is encouraging New Zealanders to get along, and this is what she has to say about women's football.
So many people now are coming to watch because it's such an amazing product. It's different from the men, it's still football, but you'll see a difference like on the way that women play. They don't fly all over the place, they really play with intent and so much skill, so much speed. The game has changed immensely, and when you go and watch it live, that's when you really appreciate how great these athletes are.
And Maya's also mentioned that she's described it as like the Halley's Comet hosting this tournament. It only comes around once every 80 years, so get along and support it.
Thank you, Felicity. Sports reporter Felicity Reid there. Michael Wood's future in politics remains in question as the disgraced former minister goes to ground, refusing to speak to media. The Labour MP resigned his remaining ministerial portfolios yesterday after revelations he failed to disclose his shares in 3 other companies on top of those he held in Auckland Airport. Here's our Deputy Political Editor, Craig McCulloch.
No one home at Michael Wood's Mount Roskill address this morning, and no answer at the end of his line.
Hi, you've reached Michael's phone. Sorry to miss your call.
The MP has fled to Auckland after his fall from favour, licking his wounds having lost his treasured ministerial titles. The Prime Minister's not heard from him either.
He's headed home. I think I'm giving him the courtesy of giving him a little bit of space. Obviously, yesterday would have been a very difficult day for him.
And the difficult days don't stop coming. The National Party has released a timeline of Michael Wood's interactions with the Cabinet Office based on new information provided by the government. It makes for damning reading. 16 times his Auckland Airport shares are raised. Again and again, officials email to ask whether the MP has sold them yet. On numerous occasions, Michael Wood does not respond. Other times he says he's in the process of selling them. In December 2020, in June 2021, in February, March and May last year, and then again 3 months ago. Still, despite all his promises, no action, not till his shares were made public this month.
And he hasn't given me an explanation for why it is that he was indicating to the Cabinet Office that they had been sold when clearly they hadn't.
The wheels are coming off, it's falling apart, it's not focused on the things that New Zealanders care about.
Both Nationals Christopher Luxon and ex-David Seymour are now broadening their attacks from Michael Wood to capture the entire Cabinet. Neither are calling for Michael Wood to go from politics altogether. Not yet.
There's still a lot about the Michael Wood case that troubles me. It just doesn't add up, and I suspect that there is more to come.
If he wants to continue in politics, he needs to think about how he can move to tidy up that part of his life which clearly doesn't seem to have been a priority for him.
It's an enormous fall for an MP regarded as one of Labour's bright lights. As a university student, Michael Wood led the party's youth wing alongside his deputy, Jacinda Ardern. In 2016, he entered Parliament through the Mount Roskill by-election, taking a whopping 2/3 of the votes cast.
It is a very good night to be Labour in Mount Roskill.
He was promoted to Cabinet in 2020, taking on portfolios close to his heart, transport and workplace relations. Considered one of Labour's more competent performers, he was flagged as a potential Prime Minister when Jacinda Ardern stepped down. Instead, when Chris Hipkins took the job uncontested, he put Michael Wood on the front bench and gave him oversight of immigration and Auckland issues as well.
I rate Michael Wood. I think he's a real talent.
That unblemished track record is now in tatters. Michael Wood must now decide whether to ask voters in his electorate for a second chance.
I think he's trying to do the right thing, but it's a tough job.
I'm surprised he's still in Parliament.
He's just going to be something of a drag on the party's reputation.
I think we need new blood here.
I think he'd be too embarrassed to stand again.
Michael Wood has already been selected as Labour's Mount Roskill candidate, but he'll be weighing his options. MPs have come back from such scandals before, but it's really a swift road to rehabilitation.
It is 24 minutes to 6. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. It's time for the business news. Ko taku hoa inai nei, ko Nona Peltier. Nona joins us to talk business. Okay, this company, is it E-Road, ER-Road? What is it?
You're right, E-Road. Very
E-Road.
good. Yeah,
okay.
E-Road.
So, $150 million takeover offer has been made. They're a local transport software firm. Who would have known? Who's after them?
Oh, it's a Canadian mob. Did I say mob? I meant company. They were
you can get away with it, Nona. Carry on.
A subsidiary of a Canadian software group called Constellation. They've offered $150 million to take over the company. They've been acquiring shares in E-Road through an Australian agent, I guess, and now hold, I think, 18%, which they've paid about $21 million for. So now they're making a full offer. It's $1.30 a share, and that compares with yesterday's closing price, or this morning's opening price, of 77 cents. And you might think, well, that sounds really good, doesn't it? Except that not so long ago, just July 2021, the share price was at $6.70. So it was worth a lot more just not so long ago. And when it debuted on the New Zealand Stock Exchange, its shares were $3. So 77 cents is where it was overnight. It's jumped up, let's see. It's jumped up to $1.23, 60% gain today. But that, I don't know how well that's going to sit with some of the shareholders who were there from the get-go. They may start to feel that maybe it's not quite a good enough offer. We did say that recently with PushPay. eRoad is one of our tech companies. They're in hot demand. Is $150 million enough? Time will tell.
All right, New Zealand's 4-day week has made Time magazine's list of the world's most influential companies. Do tell us more, Nona.
Yeah, so you might have heard of this before, Lisa, the 4-day week. This is where you work 32 hours instead of 40 hours, but you get the same amount of pay and benefits. The idea is you're more productive when you can choose your own hours, and the incentive of having, an 8-hour break is good enough for a lot of people to really pull up their socks and get busy, so productivity increases. And anyway, even though it's not really popular in New Zealand, it has not really taken off here, it has in many other places. According to the developer of it, his name is Andrew Barnes. He developed this with an associate. Her name is Charlotte Lockhart, Perpetual Guardian in 2018. Since then, it's been, let's see, United Arab Emirates has gone to a 4-day week. Legislation brought in to enable it in Japan, Russia, Lithuania, Romania, Belgium, and the government sponsored trials in Spain and Portugal, pilot programs in Brazil.
So why is Aotearoa not so keen? What does he say?
He says there's a lot of silence, so I suppose he doesn't really know, but it hasn't taken off here. And I know a lot of people have talked about it, want it, but I guess maybe... Well, what do you think, Lisa?
I don't know. Let's ask the people. 2101 on text. What do you reckon's on a 4-day week? Can you apply it to most professions? Only a few. How do you reckon it would work? Do you want it or not? Tell us your reasons. 2101 on text. Let's find out, Nona.
All right.
And now let's find out about markets.
Okay, so the NZX Top 50 fell 1/3% today. That was a drop of 37 points to 11,739. The New Zealand dollar's little change at 61.9 US cents. A bit stronger against the Australian, not surprising because of, I guess, some of the things that are going on over there. 91.5, so if you're going to Australia, might have gained a bit. 48.5 British pence. Sorry, Lisa, never changes.
Still stuck in the rut. Thank you, Nona. Ka kite. Nona Peltier there with Business News. 19 minutes away from 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Couple of quick bits of feedback from people who are in some very rainy areas. Mark's got in touch to say, I live in Napier and it's hammering down with rain. I drive home via Awatoto, where the railway bridge was destroyed by Cyclone Gabrielle, and the Naruroro and Tutaikuri rivers are both looking very high. Thanks for letting us know, Mark. And someone else says, I live in Morere, which is northern Hawke's Bay, and the weather is horrendous. This is the 5th time this year that we have experienced extreme winds and rain, unimaginable unless you are experiencing this, they say. Yeah, pretty awful for people who've been through the trauma of these floods before to be dealing with this again. Do get in touch about anything you've heard on the program this evening. We would love to hear from you. Homai o whakaaro. 2101 on text. Tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Email address checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Evie is here with the headlines. Anea Evie, mena pita pita kōrero.
A state of emergency has tonight been declared in Tairāwhiti, Gisborne. The state highway from Napier to Gisborne is closed at Wairoa, as is State Highway 35 around the Cape from Gisborne to Ruatoria, and the inland route, State Highway 2 between Ormond and Matawai. Gisborne Mayor Riet Stoltz has told Checkpoint the region is now effectively cut off. More than 150 Hawke's Bay properties, mostly in Wairoa, have had their provisional flood risk categories changed after an independent review. 137 have moved from higher risk categories 3 or 2 down to a low risk category 1, but 30 have moved up to category 3. Air New Zealand says engineers are checking one of its planes after a lightning strike on a flight to Rarotonga. Flight NZ942 was hit soon after leaving Auckland this morning and promptly returned to the airport. A Wellington City councillor says vape retailers are rushing to open new stores ahead of a ban keeping them away from schools and marae. Parents and teachers in the suburb of Strathmore are outraged to learn of the Shosha chain's plans to open near their schools. Terry O'Neill calls the move predatory but says it's not unique to Strathmore. And after 6 years of digging, archaeologists have revealed a 4,000-year-old sanctuary the size of 3 football fields in the Netherlands town of Tiel. It contains 3 burial mounds with the remains of 60 women, men and children. In one grave, they found a glass bead from Mesopotamia, that's modern-day Iraq. Those are the headlines. Now, let's look at the summary of those roads that have closed. State Highway 2, Napier to Waidua and Matawai to Ormond. State Highway 5, Taupo to Eskdale. State Highway 35, Okitu to Ruatoria. And east of Paengaroa in the Waikato, State Highway 2 is under stop-go traffic management by Kai Kokopu Road. Our next news and weather is at 6.
Kia ora rā iho. And if you're out on the roads and you need to report any hazards, etc., do get in touch. You can text us on 2101 or tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Parents and teachers in Wellington's Strathmore are outraged of vape retailers set to open near a busy a bus hub that gets their children to and from school every day. It sparked concern vape shops are rushing to open new locations ahead of a ban, limiting their proximity to schools and marae. Bill Hickman reports.
Just after 3 p.m, outside the Broadway shops in Strathmore, the pavement is thronging with young students. Next month, a Sosha vape store is opening between the local dairy and the bakery where the kids get their drinks and snacks. The shop is 1 street away from the boundary fence of Scots College and will open just weeks ahead of a ban on new vape outlets within 300 metres of schools. Strathmore parent Jodie O'Regan says she's disgusted by the timing and the location of the store.
It infuriates me because they're cashing in on these young, vulnerable children that think it's cool to vape, basically. It's a big marketing ploy. The kids try it and before they know it, they're hooked on it because it's nicotine and it's addictive.
Selling vapes to under 18s is illegal, but that's not stopping nearly 20% of Year 10 students admitting to vaping regularly in last year's ASH Smoking and Vaping Snapshot survey. Emma Clifton Perry's child attends school near the upcoming store. She says the positioning and timing of the Strathmore store is disingenuous at best.
If you genuinely are targeting adults, why are you choosing a location where the majority of the foot traffic is under 18? Why aren't you choosing a retail location like Miramar Shopping Centre or any other main shopping centre where the majority of your foot traffic would be adults?
Kahurangi School is within 300 metres of the Strathmore shops. Principal Karen Smith says she's unaware of her primary age students vaping in or around her school, but she feels the presence of the store significantly increases the risk of that happening. She says she's disappointed there's been no consultation from Shosha before they set up.
Our community does not want their presence here, and as a school and a community, we're really focused on doing everything right for our tamariki. And we believe that their store will actually have the exact opposite.
Wellington City Councillor Terry O'Neill is calling the store's position predatory and says the move is not unique to Strathmore.
We've certainly seen a significant uptake in Shosha and specialist vaping stores pop up all over the city. Had legislation been a bit quicker, we wouldn't be having this problem where a vape shop is well within 300 metres of a school premises.
Councillor Sarah Free says even ahead of the law change, a specialist vape store so close to a school zone contradicts the spirit of the Smoke-Free Environments and Regulated Products Amendment Act.
The Act does make it clear that they're not meant to open in places where they normalise vaping to young people. And this location in Strathmore is right by the bus stop where most of the kids actually catch the bus, in close proximity to at least 3 schools. I can't see what that is if not normalising vaping.
Terry O'Neill says she would like to see a similar process as alcohol licensing, where stores engage with community and authorities to approve vape and tobacco retail locations. RNZ is awaiting comments from Shosha and the Vaping Industry Association of New Zealand.
It is 12 minutes away from 6. Kia mau tonu mai. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Now, if you're just joining us, Tairāwhiti Civil Defence has called a state of emergency in that area, and Hawke's Bay is also experiencing heavy rainfall. Our reporter there, Lauren Crimp, joins us now. Kia ora, Lauren. What can you tell us about how it is in your parts of the Motu?
Kia ora, Lisa. It has been absolutely bucketing down all day. People, as you can imagine, are very anxious. We've seen lots of reports on social media of people getting really, really worried about flooding. We know that there has been some flooding out in Risington, in Eskdale and in Marae Kākahor. Now, Risington and Eskdale were obviously places that were hit quite badly during Cyclone Gabrielle. But we have had some reassurance from the Civil Defence Controller here, Ian McDonald. He says evacuations are not on the cards. Rivers have risen, but not alarmingly so, and nothing like what we saw during Cyclone Gabrielle. However, he does want to reassure people there are staff working overnight and keeping a very, very nervous and close eye on things, he says, and if evacuation centres are needed to be open, they have people on hand to do so.
And Lauren, I imagine there's a fair bit of anxiety given the fact people have experienced terrible flooding so recently too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was speaking to one resident yesterday. She's got 3 young boys and her youngest just doesn't sleep when it rains. He's just so afraid of what's going to happen. They live out in Whirinaki and were rescued out there, obviously, when the floods hit. And many people out here are the same. They experience such anxiety when the rain hits. So despite that reassurance from Civil Defence, people will be worried and are encouraged to sort of look out for one another and their neighbours especially, because this rain isn't going to let up anytime soon. The rain warning here is in place for now until midnight Saturday.
Thank you for the update. That is Lauren Crimp joining us there from Hawke's Bay, where there is heavy rain. Also, Tairāwhiti Civil Defence has called a state of emergency. They've got a red rain warning there too, and a warning to residents if they are worried about rising river levels, don't wait for an official evacuation order. Get out as soon as you can. Now, residents in Marlborough Sounds are making their views clear on the importance of road access after flooding left them isolated 2 years ago. Last week, Council told the worst affected residents in Kenipuru Sound parts of the road will be reinstated with a focus on marine access in the future. Samantha G caught a boat out to Waitaria Bay to attend a public meeting.
Kenipuru residents know what they want, and that's road access.
Unfortunately, there's been an awful lot of damage caused to this road in the last storm events, but it's really important for this community that the road's reinstated and a road that's fit for purpose, i.e. something that is able to take trucks so businesses can function properly.
That's Robert Harper, a commercial beekeeper who has lived in the Sounds for more than 40 years. He says all options for funding that road need to be considered.
Personally, within our business, we would be more than happy to see a rate increase if it meant getting the road back. It's something that should go out to the community, but it's certainly something that we should look at doing.
Richard Cunningham chose to retire in the Sounds and now has a damaged road either side of his property.
They say they're going to maintain the road and fix it, but we're just worried. Our area's got a marine focus and we just don't really think that's going to work for us, because when you look at the documentation, they sort of think that our area, Kenipuru, has marine access. Some lucky people have beach access, but most of us don't.
Portage resident Murray Robson says money needs to be spent on strengthening Kenipuru Road now.
Save the bit of road we've got so we don't lose it. There's 2 particular spots that need saving now, not later. Pin the bottom of the roads now and hold them so we've always got a road.
Neville Cunningham recently moved to Maho Sound and says plans to develop his tourism business are on hold until there is some certainty about access to his property.
That's the major gripe, is that with all the health and safety consents and that the council have to put up with, it uses 80% or 50% of the funding, gets wasted internally and doesn't actually get onto the job.
Adrian Harvey has lived in Clover Bay for more than 60 years. A 5th-generation resident, he says it's not the first time marine access has been suggested for the Kenipuru Sound.
We had this discussion 20 years ago with Marlborough Roads about closing the road to truck and trailer units, and they were basically told, well, it wasn't going to work because they'd have to spend $25 million in the Port of Havelock 20 years ago to be able to cater for the livestock and the trucks that were going through there.
Braden Milletta, a fourth-generation sheep and beef farmer at Waitui in Titirangi Bay, says the plan is a step in the right direction. He says farming over the last 2 years, without road access, has been a struggle.
That's the reason why the road was built in the first place. Obviously the sounds, historically, I think it was before the 70s, was all boat access only with barges and ships. Then the decision was made to put the road in as an economic development for the community. You know, it's sort of stepped back 50 years, and the barge has been doing a fantastic job keeping us going, but yeah, it is quite difficult.
Public feedback is open on the Marlborough Sounds Future Access Study until July 11.
The FIFA Women's World Cup touched down in Dunedin today as part of its trophy tour ahead of the tournament. Excitement is building in the southern city with only 28 days until the World Cup kicks off. Our Otago Southern reporter Timothy Brown went along to see some excited fans as the trophy was unveiled.
A group of about 60 intermediate age girls were first to lay eyes on the trophy when it was unveiled in Dunedin today. The girls were treated to some drills, skills and games before the star of the show arrived. But 11-year-old Alex King is in no doubt as to what the highlight of the day was.
Seeing the trophy.
And what did you think of the trophy and getting to see it?
Very cool.
Dunedin is going to be playing host to the Swiss team. Amanda Dyer from the Dunedin City Council says they're looking forward to it.
We're setting up a team base camp for the Swiss out at Tahuna Park, so they're going to be with us for about 3 weeks. So, yeah, really looking forward to having them here in the city.
To paint the town red?
Well, yeah, exactly. So, yeah, we've got all sorts of exciting things happening out at Tahuna Park, and, yeah, we can't wait to have them here.
She says tickets to the city's 6 games are selling fast. None are more excited than Jessica Fuller, Southern Football's Girls and Women's Development Officer, who ran the kids through their paces this morning.
I didn't get to see like a football ferns game until I was like 15, so I think it's going to be really important that young girls and boys get to see these great world-class players here in Dunedin at the stadium, because you can't be what you can't see.
She's played the game since she was 8. So she knows just how much it will mean to these kids to see their heroes on the biggest stage in person.
I think it's incredibly awesome. I think growing up, football wasn't always cool for girls, and I think a big part of this tournament and in my role is making football cool for girls. I think it's incredibly important, the visibility that the tournament's going to bring, not just to girls and women's football, but women's sport in New Zealand is going to be huge.
And for some, like 11-year-old Lauren Scarth, seeing the trophy is already daring her to dream big.
It's really cool to see the trophy.
Cool to see the trophy? And do you hope to win it one day?
Definitely.
But for now, she's just looking forward to what's coming over the next couple of months. You excited about the World Cup?
Yes, very.
Yep. What are you looking forward to most?
Watching the game.
Yep. You going to a game?
Yeah.
Yep.
Going to the Switzerland versus New Zealand.
That game at Forsyth Bar Stadium on July the 30th is shaping up to be a blockbuster. The football Ferns have never qualified for the knockouts at the tournament, and victory over the Swiss in their last pool game may be just what they need to make history. Jessica Fuller smells an upset.
I'm backing the girls. I'm going to back them. I know they've been getting a tiny bit of stick in the media, but I'm backing the girls and hopefully we can get through.
And she's not alone. Who's going to win this year?
Football Ferns.
Which means there's only one last message from Dunedin.
It is not just New Zealand feeling left out in the cold by Taylor Swift. A Queensland MP has launched a petition for her to add a show in his state during her world tour next year. Liberal MP Andrew Wallace says Queensland needs a look in.
I'm a huge Taylor Swift fan. As the dad of 4 daughters ranging between 20 and 31, I've spent many years driving my daughters around listening to Taylor Swift, and I am an absolute convert.
Taylor Swift has announced 5 shows in Australia, 2 in Melbourne and 3 in Sydney. Andrew Wallace says there's a gap in the pop star's schedule where he thinks a visit to the Sunshine State could slot in.
There is about a week in between her 3 concerts in Sydney and her 2 concerts in Melbourne. And that is a perfect opportunity. Taylor, I'm asking you, I'm begging you, I'm pleading with you, I'll get down on my knees if I have to. Please come to Queensland.
Oh, hang about. If there's a gap, what about us? Taylor Swift has also left New Zealand out of her schedule, upsetting her huge fan base here. Last night, Eden Park boss Nick Sortner told us she needs to reconsider.
Well, Taylor, at 3:49 today, my mother, who is based in Melbourne, texted me and said, Nicholas, have you tried to get Taylor Swift to Eden Park? They're very excited in Melbourne and Sydney, and what about Auckland? So if your 78-year-old mother in Melbourne is saying Taylor Swift should be coming to Auckland, I reckon that's a good enough example as to why.
And right here at Checkpoint, we will stand very by to see if there are any changes in the schedule. We'll keep you updated. Evie ready to break into song at any minute.
Only if you harmonise, Lisa Owen.
If she decides to come in here only, that is a promise for you. Evie will be practising in the meantime. On a more serious note, Victoria University considering cutting secondary teacher education courses. A lot of feedback on this one. Why is Vic cutting teacher education a no in need rather than, say, Latin, says this listener. Dire consequences from failing to fund tertiary education. Decision makers clearly not capable of making such decisions. On the other hand, Stuart's got in touch and says teachers can go to multiple training institutes. They don't have to be local. After all, I didn't go to the Onehunga Medical School. My sons didn't go to the South Waikato Environmental Planning or Medical Schools. The location of the school makes no difference as long as they are within New Zealand. 4-day working week. Nona was talking about this in the business news. Seems there's a few fans out there. This person says 4-day week. Let's split the difference and make it a 9-day fortnight. Jim from Papamoa has got in touch. Hi, Jim. We do not want Checkpoint reduced to 4 days a week. No more chatterbox, Jim. Maybe someone else could do it on the 5th day. Dan says, I'd be happy to do a 4 times 10-hour days if needed. It can work in all industries, reckon Dan. Even those that operate 24/7, 365 just need a good roster.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Ngā mihi o te pō. Good evening. Ko Evie Ashton tēnei. Gisborne Mayor Riet Stoltz says the region is now effectively cut off. A state of emergency for Tairāwhiti has been declared after heavy rain. The state highway from Napier to Gisborne is now closed at Wairoa, as are State Highway 35 around the Cape from Gisborne to Ruatoria and the inland State Highway 2 route between Ormond and Matawai. About 60 local roads are also closed. Riet Stoltz has told Checkpoint if people don't feel safe, they should leave their homes immediately.
We are expecting lots more to come over the next few days. We have had a lot of rain already and we are trying to be as prepared as possible.
Riet Stoltz says people who don't need to travel should stay home. Meanwhile, roads are starting to flood in parts of Hawke's Bay. A heavy rain warning is in place until Sunday. Farmer Patrick O'Rourke says things are getting worse in the rural inland area of Risington, which was cut off during Cyclone Gabrielle.
Surface flooding is really starting to kick in now. I came down the road about 2:30 this afternoon. Fresh slips were starting to come down and the water was coming across the road in 10 or 12 places. The actual river itself is not outside of its bank yet. It's really just the surface flooding.
Patrick O'Rourke says some culverts are still buried under silt, so water is flooding down the roads rather than across farmland. Hawke's Bay Civil Defence says while some roads are flooded in parts of the region and rivers have risen, evacuations aren't likely at this stage. Civil Defence Controller Ian MacDonald says his team is well prepared and there's no cause for concern yet. An oceanographer says if the stricken submarine in the mid-Atlantic is found soon, it will still take hours to winch it up. It's been 3 days since the Titan vanished without a trace, but there's a glimmer of hope with banging noises heard in the search area. Oceanographer David Gallo, who co-led an expedition to create the first map of the Titanic on the ocean floor, told Checkpoint that if the sub is located, it will take time to retrieve it.
It's not 10 minutes, it's going to be more like several hours to get it up. And that's after you free it from whatever's holding it at depth. So maybe a cable that is caught around and you have to cut the cable. Then you have to figure out how do you hook up the cable, the tow cable. All those things come into play.
The submersible is expected to run out of oxygen later tonight. Parents in the Wellington suburb of Strathmore are outraged vape stores are rushing to open close to schools ahead of a ban. The Shosha chain of vape suppliers will open a store next to bus stops a street away from the boundary of Scots College next month. Emma Clifton-Perry says the move ahead of the ban in August is disingenuous at best.
If you genuinely are targeting adults, why are you choosing a location where the majority of the foot traffic is under 18? Why aren't you choosing a retail location like Miramar Shopping Centre or any other main shopping centre where the majority of your foot traffic would be adult?
Selling vapes to under 18s is illegal, but last year nearly 20% of Year 10 students surveyed by anti-smoking lobby ASH admitted to vaping regularly. An employment lawyer says an Act proposal to exclude independent contractors from the definition of employee will result in more exploitation. The party wants to change the Employment Relations Act to stop contractors from challenging their working status in the employment court. It says a recent court case ruling that Uber drivers are employees could discourage businesses from offering contractors better working conditions. But lawyer Gary Pollock says such court cases are taken because employers are circumventing the rules. ACT insists safeguards will be put in place. The Education Minister, Jan Tinetti, has indicated the government is considering ways of helping Victoria University. The university has proposed cutting 229 jobs and closing some areas of study because it's facing a $33 million deficit. Asked if the government could provide extra funding, Ms Tinetti said it's considering options.
We have asked for advice around options, around funding. I'm still working through that. But what I will say is that it has been really difficult times for everybody at the moment and cost of living, and universities have to adjust to this. They are autonomous, and so they have to make their own decisions in this space.
Jan Tinetti says universities make their own decisions about which courses to cut or continue. Victoria's enrolments have dropped, but staff say universities have been underfunded for years. And Auckland Council has announced a stand-in chief executive. Phil Wilson, the council's current Director of Governance and CCO Partnerships, will become acting CEO early next month. Jim Staback resigned earlier this year. Auckland Mayor Wayne Brown says recruiting a new permanent chief executive won't be completed until the end of the year. And in sport, excitement is building in Dunedin for the FIFA Women's World Cup as the trophy landed in the city today, just 4 weeks before the tournament gets underway. A group of about 60 intermediate-aged girls were first to lay eyes on the trophy when it was unveiled in Dunedin during its tour of Australia and New Zealand. Dunedin is hosting the Swiss team in the pool stage of the tournament. The Swiss will meet the Football Ferns in Dunedin on July the 30th in New Zealand's last pool match. Amanda Dyer of Dunedin City Council says she's hopeful of a sellout.
It is huge for the city, and ticket sales are really active for that game, and we're just looking forward to getting that stadium completely filled for that.
The Football Ferns will likely have to beat the Swiss to qualify for the knockout stage for the first time. That's the news.
I'm Catherine Ryan. On 9 to noon tomorrow, an unlikely friendship. Director Russell Chadwick's film Good Boy documents the relationship between a man and a 680-kilogram grizzly bear. Nathan James Thomas talks about an untethered life as a digital nomad, what it's like and how to prepare for life on the road. And we look ahead to the weekend of sport, play some music and share some laughs with our comedians. With me on 9 to noon on RNZ National.
You're back with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the updated short forecast from Met Service to midnight Friday. A red warning is in force for Tairāwhiti, Gisborne due to prolonged rain. Northland, Auckland, Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty, Gisborne and Hawke's Bay. Periods of rain heavy at times, thunderstorms possible. Waikato, Waitomo and the Central High Country, occasional rain possibly heavy. Taranaki to Wellington, mostly cloudy, occasional rain. Wairarapa, also Marlborough and Nelson, periods of rain with some heavy falls, especially about eastern Marlborough. Bulla and Westland, mainly fine, patchy rain possible for Bulla. Canterbury, North Otago and Dunedin, cloudy about the coast and plains, with showers turning to rain tomorrow. Fine spells elsewhere, becoming cloudy tomorrow evening with scattered showers developing. Central Otago, Clutha and Southland, also Fiordland, partly cloudy with areas of valley fog. Isolated showers about Fiordland and the south coast, clearing tomorrow morning. And Rekohu, Chatham Islands, cloudy periods, the chance of a shower. It is 7 minutes past 6. I'll have news headlines for you at 6:30.
Kia ora rā e ho, no mai hoki mai, this is Checkpoint, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. An oceanographer who co-led an expedition to create the first map of the Titanic on the ocean floor believes authorities should narrow their search for the missing Titan to a 5 to 10 kilometre circle of the shipwreck. David Gallo's best friend is Titan passenger Paul-Henri Narjolet, a 77-year-old retired French Navy commander who has visited the Titanic wreck more than 35 times. He says if Mr Narjolet is still alive, it is likely he is the one searchers have been hearing banging. Oxygen is due to run out on board the Titan just after 11 o'clock tonight, New Zealand time. Earlier this afternoon, Mr Gallo told me about the journey to the Titanic.
The bottom of the seafloor is like an alien planet. It's an absolute pitch black dark. There is no light. There is no heat from the sun. It's cold. There's not a lot of food for anything to eat, so animals are very sparse there. It's like a barren landscape, and you go across that landscape, and suddenly, looming in front of you, coming up quickly, is this huge wall of metal that is the Titanic. And there it is, 70 feet or something like that of wall, and you slowly, with a submarine or robot, go up along that wall and come out on the deck of Titanic, the bow of Titanic with the railings, and then it's glorious because the lights shine out, and it's very clearly the grand ship that it is. So it's very, very, very exciting and very, very, very emotional because you think of the things that have actually happened there in 1912, so long ago. So you can't help but being overwhelmed by the thoughts of the loved ones saying goodbye, and some of them survived and some of them didn't. It's just packed. Science is supposed to be dispassionate, but you can't go to Titanic in a dispassionate way. It takes you over quickly.
So you have a very good friend who is on this vessel, Paul-Henri Narjolet, and he is an experienced explorer. What would you expect of him in a crisis situation like this?
Well, if I were in a crisis, and I've been in some ugly times, we've been together at sea in storms and the like, but he is as comfortable on the deck of a ship in a howling storm as he is sitting in a Parisian cafe sipping his cappuccino or espresso. So he's incredibly wise. He's been to Titanic more than any other person. And his demeanor and confidence are just amazing. So, yes, he's my friend, but he's loved by hundreds of people know him. In France, they know him as Mr. Titanic. But he is the kind of person that you would want to be, if you had to be stuck with someone, he's the kind of guy you want there with him.
Would you expect him to know that banging on the sub or in some way could raise attention and draw rescuers to them?
Absolutely. But no doubt in my mind about it, because he would know that that's the only way, best way of being found is to let people know you're still alive and to have them focus on where you are. Now, what I really wonder is, did they signal back? Did they make noise back so he knows that he's been heard? I don't know that that's happened. It seems like that should have happened, because then if he changed his tap, tap, tap every, whatever it was, 3 hours or something like that, then you would know for sure that that's a human somewhere on the bottom in the mix. But yeah, he would do that kind of thing. There's not much else you could do besides be sure your fellow passengers are not taking up too much oxygen, are calm and relaxed, and that's the best way to survive longer periods of time.
David, would you ever have contemplated going in the Titan?
I did contemplate it, and the answer was I would not go in Titan.
Why?
It's not my kind of thing. Well, let me say, I don't want to say because it was obviously unsafe, because I'm not qualified to say that. And in fact, because PH and several others like PH of my colleagues told me it was safe. So, and they understand.
But your gut told you something else, David?
That's just not you know what? I don't like the idea. Normally, when you go to the bottom of the sea, it's in a submarine that holds 3 people. You go down through a hatch, and you take your seat, and then you close the hatch above you. You turn the dial, and the hatch is closed, and there you are. The 3 of you sit in this womb-like capsule, space capsule, with the windows and all that. With Titan, you climb in this tube with 4 other people, and they close the front. The front opens up. There's no hatch per se, but the nose cone comes off, and then they bolt it back on, and you're in there. You can't get out. You can't open the door. Even if you're in the air, you just can't open it. And I don't like being stuck in it. It's just, I'm not really claustrophobic, but it would bother me to be in that kind of space with 4 other people knowing that I couldn't get out.
Do you know if there is any way, if they were to find the Titan and raising it would take some time, do you know if there is any way to get oxygen inside of that vessel while it is submerged?
No, there's no way that I think that's possible. You'd maybe think that, you could certainly drill a hole through some place in the titanium part of it. It would take a long time, and by that time you could probably get the cap off. No, and you raise a good point, because if it's found, then it becomes a race to get the submarine to the surface, and not only to the surface, but to a place where you can get people that can use equipment to take the nose off. And that whole thing's horrific to me, because if you could get there at the very last second, and it would be ugly to do that. And it would be a great idea if there was some sort of a hatchway or some sort of a passageway that you could get air into the sub, but no, there's none of that.
If they were to find it, do you have any idea of how long it takes to raise it from, let's say, the bottom of the ocean?
Yeah, I would say that typically it would take, if the submarine was on its own accord, it would take about 2 hours to get to the surface from that depth. Maybe if you hooked it up to a winch with a cable, you could come up faster, but I'm almost positive that's not true. It would come up slower if you were pulling it up in a cable. So you're looking at a good deal of time. It's not 10 minutes. It's going to be more like several hours to get it up. And that's after you free it from whatever's holding it to the at depth. So maybe a cable that is caught around, and you have to cut the cable. Then you have to figure out how do you hook up the cable, the tow cable. Where do you put it on the submarine? All those things come into play. So, my feeling was that now that they know there are sounds that it could be the submarine, they need to assume that it is, because we're out of time, and start heading the right kinds of equipment to that spot.
I know you retain hope, but from everything you have outlined and the simple maths that you have laid out for us, the reality is the odds are against them, isn't it?
Yeah, but that doesn't bother me so much, because, again, I think what we need is a miracle. And we all know that miracles have happened. Things that you never thought possible have become possible. And that's what I have to hold on, because I don't want people to go, the oxygen would have run out today, so let's give it till tomorrow, and then, we're going to stop all this race to find the sub. That's not good. I think they need to race to find the sub no matter what, and keep going as fast as possible.
David, you have extensive knowledge of the wreck, right, and mapping of the area. Where would your best guess be for where it is?
Well, this is a good question. So if you look at the facts, they were going to dive onto the Titanic from the surface ship, which is 2 miles away. The most sensible thing to do is for the ship to be above Titanic and then launch the submarine while the submarine is above Titanic, not 10 miles to the west or north or whatever, right above Titanic. And so about an hour plus into the dive is when they lose control of they lose contact with the sub. So that means they lost contact while the sub was in the water, mid-water we call it, which means that they probably weren't snagged by anything. Because they were not near the wreck site itself. And if that's the case, I mean, the first place to begin looking is always at the last known position of the vehicle. So I would think that the best place to start looking for is right at the wreck site, Titanic wreck site. That's why I don't know about this looking. They say we're looking at this huge, vast amount of ocean. I don't know that. I mean, they're doing air searches, and they probably have to do them anyway. But I think the search area really ought to be just 5, maybe 10 kilometers circle. Not very big at all. So it should be somewhere in that circle.
What do you think this is going to mean for people visiting the Titanic and Titanic tourism?
Yeah, I think it's going to change these things in a big way. I really do. And I don't know how. What I worry about is it's going to become this international bureaucratic mess rather than people that understand wreck sites, people that understand the passion for diving into the deep ocean, people that don't understand the technology. Behind me, I have a stack of reports and policies designed to protect Titanic, and none of them can protect Titanic. They're just kind of academic works of art, if you want to put it that way. So, yeah, I think there will be a very serious review of what happened with that submarine and how do we then control who gets to go to Titanic. Because back when Titanic was discovered, there were very few groups that could go to that depth. Maybe 3, the United States, Soviets, France, Japan, go with a submarine. Today, with just a very little bit of money, anyone can build a submarine and go to Titanic. And that's been done. Jim Cameron built his own submarine. Victor Vescovo built his own submarine. And people, there are many hedge fund people that have built their own submarines. So it's suddenly become relatively easy to go to that depth. And so that's when you really have to start wondering, how do you begin to police the area? Because it is a protected site. It's a cultural resource, so you don't want people going there and taking chandeliers and things like that from the site.
And that was oceanographer David Gallo talking about the missing Titan sub. 19 minutes after 6 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Residents in Tikaraka and Tairāwhiti are self-evacuating with the region in a state of emergency. Heavy rain is expected to last until Sunday. Tikaraka Volunteer Fire Brigade Fire Chief Jamie Simpson joins me now. Kia ora, Jamie. How are you and everybody else in the community right now?
Well, we're a bit damp, but we're bearing up to it. We've had a lot of rain leading up to this event, so the ground around the place is really, really wet as well.
So what is it looking like? The river and the land?
The river's up, the roads north and south are blocked, and at this stage we're just monitoring river levels to see where it's going to go to. It is still rising. There's a lot of slips appearing in the hills because, the ground is not able to hold any more water.
So has the river broken its banks?
No, not yet. Not into the township, but it has in the lower lying areas where it is actually meant to breach to sort of relieve pressure. So it has there.
So, Jamie, the village is effectively cut off, isn't it, at this point?
It is, yeah, north and south. Some have self-evacuated before. The road's closed. The local school's opened up as a welfare centre. So we're just monitoring everything at this stage.
Have you had to help anyone out of their homes?
No, not at this stage.
Okay. So what are your biggest concerns as you watch this? Just
more rain. Obviously, the river level is one thing, but because everything is so saturated, land movement's another issue that we need to be wary of. So yeah, it's a bit of a twofold thing.
With the road,
it needs to be a bit of a campaign sort of thing, because it is going till Sunday apparently.
Yeah. So the road's a bit rough and blocked in 2 directions. Where does that leave you if people do need assistance?
We have a few supplies here. We've learnt from last time, so we are reasonably well prepared, but we just have to cross that bridge when we come to it, and work on other support. If we do need medical support, we can we do have staff here that are trained. So, and other different things that we may need, we can just work on that and see how we can get by.
Jamie, have you got any idea how many people have gone to the school, which they're advising people to go to if they feel unsafe?
Not as yet. I haven't been back to speak with the civil defence guys there for about an hour or so, but there was people starting to arrive, so at that stage when I left, probably about 20 or 30 people there.
And what advice are you giving people who are in their homes, might be a little bit concerned?
If they are concerned, then self-evacuate if they are concerned and go to the school and log in there. And then we will be watching the river overnight and be doing a warning sort of a process if we do need to overnight. We have been around already just advising people that are in lower lying areas, so they are aware.
So, Jamie, if you do have to tell people to get moving at some point in the middle of the night, how will you do that? How will that happen?
Basically, we will. It will be with our fire engines and the police vehicle. We will go around with our sirens and loudspeakers and door knock. We've sort of got an idea on where things will go if they do go to that scale, where we need to be first. So we'll do that, and then hopefully it doesn't get to that.
I hope so too. Best of luck, Jamie. That is the Volunteer Fire Brigade Chief at Tikaraka, Jamie Simpson there. Some people evacuating to the local school. The road is blocked in both directions, so the village is basically isolated and cut off. As he mentioned, if they need to tell people to get moving, they will do that with fire trucks in the night. They're keeping a watching brief. In Australia, a damning report has highlighted the conditions suffered by dozens of asylum seekers languishing in its hotel detention system. The report from the Human Rights Commission has detailed the serious impacts to detainees' mental health and physical health from months spent confined to hotel rooms with limited access to fresh air and exercise. The ABC's Tom Melville reports.
Hamid Reza El-Kai fled Iran about 10 years ago after he converted from Islam to Christianity. After time on Christmas Island and 4 years in detention on Nauru, Hamid Reza was transferred by immigration authorities to the Meriton Hotel in Brisbane, where he thought his ordeal was coming to an end. He was wrong.
That was so hard for me, terrible and so suffering, because for 117 days I was there. And for 170 days, if you stay in a closed place in the room and we couldn't open the windows and they couldn't open the door, 1 hour they took us for fresh air. Just 1 hour a day.
Hamid Reza spent 4 months in that hotel in Brisbane in a small room with a window that didn't open. It had a considerable impact on his mental health.
After, one time, I said to them, please open the window. And once I got panic attack and blood pressure, and they moved me to Royal Brisbane Hospital by ambulance.
The experiences of people like Hamid Reza, consigned to what are known as alternative places of detention, APODs for short, have been detailed in a new report from the Human Rights Commission. It found that instead of being restricted to exceptional cases, the use of APODs has become a regular feature of Australia's detention system, and many people have been held there for months or even years. Lorraine Finlay is the Australian Human Rights Commissioner, and in compiling the report, she visited these hotels and spoke to the detainees.
The basic truth is hotels simply aren't appropriate to be used as places of detention for lengthy periods. And what we're seeing here is they have been used in that way in Australia. And I think people would be shocked to find that in the middle of some of our capital cities, we actually have places of detention right in front of us.
There are currently 44 people in APODs in Australia. Lorraine Finlay says that number is dropping.
That was double that a year ago when there were 88. So the numbers are improving and we welcome that development. But we are concerned at the fact that a lot of these recommendations that are in our current report aren't new, and yet we're seeing recommendations that have been repeatedly noted when what we actually need is to see those recommendations implemented and conditions improved.
In a statement, the Home Affairs Department has told the ABC it's worked to reduce its reliance on hotel detention, but their use remains crucial to ensuring there's short-term accommodation available. In England, the festival gates at Glastonbury have been opened to allow thousands of excited campers to descend upon the grounds for the 38th time. The music bill across the long weekend includes Sir Elton John, Lana Del Rey and Lewis Capaldi, but the Arctic Monkeys are in doubt because of laryngitis. Ooh, unlucky. Here's the BBC's entertainment reporter, Colin Patterson.
The moment Glastonbury opened its doors.
3, 2, 1.
Festival boss Emily Evis doing the duties.
Welcome this way.
And optimistic Friday's headliners Arctic Monkeys will play, despite laryngitis causing last night's Dublin show to be called off.
They cancelled that. He's recovering. I'm sure we're going to be all right. We've got a couple of backup plans, if not, but I reckon we'll be.
Oh, really?
I'm not telling you anything, Colin.
Something.
We've always got backup plans.
Could the churn-ups, whoever they are, step up to headline if he doesn't?
Well, I wouldn't like to say. There needs to be a surprise.
This year, the capacity has been increased to a total of 210,000, including this Elton John fan who'd come a long, long way.
Came all the way from Korea just for the Glastonbury.
First customer. Festival goers were using all kinds of techniques to bring in their belongings.
You know, you think it'll be my first rodeo. That's a lot of stuff.
Some very dubious washing methods were being discussed. You've arrived at Glastonbury with 2 buckets. Can you explain?
One's to wash my body and one's to wash my face, so I've got lots of flannels.
And only at Glastonbury can you have a misunderstanding like this. The rollers. Explain.
It's not great. I know. So we were walking and then it just all snapped. So now we've literally had to drag it the whole way. It's a nightmare.
And the rollers?
What rollers? I mean rollers. I thought you meant the rollers, the wheels of the thing. I know, I just got a curly blue this morning.
The music doesn't even start on the main stages for another 2 days. Bye from Glastonbury.
And bye from us too. We're out of time. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō. Tune in at 5 a.m. tomorrow. First up are in the City of the Future for the Super Rugby final. And you're scratching your heads. What is the City of the Future, you say? 5 a.m. tomorrow morning. You'll find out exactly where they are. And we'll catch you a little later in the day. See you then.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Paul Marie, I'm Evie Ashton. A state of emergency has been declared in Tairāwhiti, with the region now on the most serious red weather warning. Sections of state highways are closed, along with about 60 local roads. Meanwhile, a heavy rain warning is in place for Hawke's Bay until Sunday. Civil Defence says while some roads are flooded and rivers have risen, evacuations aren't on the cards. Time is running out for the tourist submersible that went missing on a visit to the wreck of the Titanic. It's been 3 days since the Titan vanished without a trace, with 5 people on board. And the FIFA Women's World Cup trophy arrived in Dunedin today, 4 weeks before the tournament gets underway. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 7.
Tomorrow on Afternoons with Jessie Mulligan, Martin Bosley has an incredible recipe for cauliflower cheese baked potato. Following in the footsteps of their big sister Jenny's success, country singers the Mitchell Twins join us for New Zealand Live. Plus, Critter of the Week, and former Green MP Gareth Hughes drops in. He's partway through a speaking tour looking at the well-being economy. That's on Afternoons with Jessie Mulligan from 1 p.m. tomorrow here on RNZ National.
Kei te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. You are listening to RNZ National. Kia ora rā, you're with me, Evie Ashton, through till 7. Hope you're taking good care of yourselves, no matter where you are this evening. On the detail tonight, experts say this sunken shipwreck could be a disaster bigger than the Rena. So why hasn't anything been done to prevent it?
This is not a new story. It's a New Zealand shipwreck story, complete with sunken gold.
But there's something else in the ship as well, which is causing concern. It's oil. So there's still oil in the ship, and there is concern about how that seeps out.
So now it's an urgent story.
The Niagara is
going to go at some stage. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when.
And it's an increasingly frustrating one.
Everybody's aware of it. Everybody wrings their hands over it. Everybody's concerned, but it's going to cost money.
Kia ora, I'm Alexia Russell, and today on The Detail, the wreck of the RMS Niagara. It's sitting and corroding on the seabed off Bream Head at the northern edge of the Hauraki Gulf Marine Park. It has oil on board, possibly lots of it, way more than the Rena had. How much more? We don't know. And that's the problem, because no one is willing to pay the $1 million or so it will cost to survey the wreck.
We have this sort of brooding risk, potentially catastrophic risk to the health not only of the Hauraki Gulf, but the health of our marine life and our communities that live around that area.
Alex Rogers is the Executive Officer of the Hauraki Gulf Forum, which is trying to ramp up the pressure on the government to act. He's hoping for a ministerial meeting next week.
The northern waters of the Hauraki Gulf are where our Brooders whales live. Those are our resident tohora, our whales. That's where the fairy tern resides, one of our most endangered birds nationally. And it is home to some of the most beautiful biodiverse marine life anywhere in the country. And the Niagara is sitting there at 120 metres depth in the northern waters of the Gulf. And it's just ticking away at the moment.
Like a time bomb.
It is. And, you know, this has been 83 years in the making. But we're at the period now which they call peak leak. So all around the world, there are these wrecks from World War II that are corroding, degrading, and they're all going to go at some point.
Danger is lurking off our coasts, and hardly anybody suspects anything. A rusting legacy of the past, ticking time bombs.
I'll take you back to June 1940. The Niagara leaves port in Auckland, bound for Vancouver. It's going to go via Suva and Honolulu. And it's got around 350 passengers and crew aboard, but it's also carrying a secret. The Niagara has in its hold around 590 gold bars. This is payment between the United Kingdom and the United States for munitions. And these gold bars are worth the equivalent of 400 million New Zealand dollars in today's terms. So these were being shipped from here to Canada to then go on to the States. But unbeknownst to us, the Germans also had a secret at that time. They had recently come into the northern waters of the Hauraki Gulf, unnoticed, and had laid sea mines across the entrance to the Hauraki Gulf.
All right, I'm sensing a collision story comes next.
Yeah, so at 3 a.m. on the morning after the Niagara left the port of Auckland, kabam, it hit a German mine in the northern waters of the marine park. It took about 2 hours to sink. The fore area, the front of the ship was severely damaged by the explosion from the mine. And luckily, all 350 passengers and crew got off alive. The only recorded casualty was the ship's cat, a cat called Ozzy, who apparently went down with the wreck. But everybody got off alive, but the ship and the gold contained within it sunk to the bottom of the seafloor, and there were urgent efforts thereafter to recover the gold, as you might imagine. So the year after, almost all of the gold was recovered, and then another operation about a decade later recovered all but 5 gold bars.
So there are 5 gold bars down there?
There are, in theory, 5 gold bars down there, and that would have a current value well in excess of $1 million.
Why has the ship lain there for so long?
I guess once the gold was removed, in most people's eyes, it had very little value. So it was a known wreck. It was known that the front half of the ship was very badly damaged, and that most of the oil would have escaped from that part of the ship. But to be honest, once the gold was out, there was not a lot of wider interest in finding out much more about it, until along comes a New Zealander by the name of Keith Gordon in the 80s and starts putting his remote-operated vehicle down there to take a look at the wreck.
It's a shipwreck with a great history, and it was always beyond reach in a lot of ways. It was always viewed as being the Mount Everest of New Zealand shipwrecks as far as divers go, but it was beyond the technology back in those days when we were interested in it.
This is Keith Gordon, the first person to raise the alarm over the leaking oil.
And when I acquired a remote-operated vehicle, we thought, well, OK, let's go and see what the Niagara's all about. And so in 1988, we went out to the wreck site and put the ROV down, which allowed us to view in real time, and telepresence was more or less affecting us as though we were actually there. At the same time, I took out a salvage agreement with Her Majesty's government on the gold that was reported still remaining on the wreck. So that was always a big attraction. And people would always, when you mention the Niagara, the first thing people would always mention or was interested, well, what about the gold? But now it's, what about the oil problem? So the gold's still there.
Viscous drops of oil run out of the grab. The researchers call them the black tears of the sea.
It was also the first ship to be certified to use oil as a fuel. It actually, when it was launched on its maiden voyage out to New Zealand, it did burn coal. But then it was converted to oil because it was far cheaper to operate on oil. And operating to the North America, they could, oil was quite easily available up there.
Somewhat ironic now that that oil is at the bottom of the sea and threatening to come up.
The actual amount of oil that the tank's total capacity the ship could carry was 4,324 tonnes of oil when she was fully fueled. And of course, it needed quite a lot of oil to sail that Pacific distance from Sydney through up to Vancouver. And as such, on those voyages, she was carrying quite a large amount of oil.
Have you seen oil come up from the wreck?
Yeah, that was during our explorations of the wreck. Even way back when we were using the ROV, and even we're out there involved doing filming too, at times for like Discovery Channel and that, and oil was always coming up. And one occasion when we were based at Tutakaka, where I did live, and we would set out from Tutakaka, and one occasion we did hit an oil slick 15 kilometres long. But it was the old story, follow the oil and you'd find the wreck.
So what year was this? This is in the 90s.
Yes. When it first started with the ROV was 1988, and did write a letter to the authorities expressing our concern on, I think it would have been 1990, reporting, that we felt there was still a lot of oil there. In fact, the Herald reporter Graham Scott, who used to follow our activities quite closely, he even made a point in his newspaper reporting at the time and articles about the danger of the oil. And over the years, there was regular reports about the danger of this oil. There was sort of headlines in the media like ticking time bomb, ecological time bomb in the Gulf. And there'd be various statements made and government replies. And in a lot of cases, there was situations like they would state, the oil is too cold. The oil would be actually solid, so there was no danger. But even in the middle of winter, the water temperature down on the wreck would be somewhere around about 12 or 14 degrees centigrade. And so it certainly wasn't freezing like they were trying to give the impression. So it's been a worry over the years. There's been a lot of different groups, ecological, and people were concerned about the birds, especially we have got some quite critical bird life out there. What this oil could do, if it erupted.
But I guess if you were the government and you wanted to save money, you could say, well, you've been raising the alarm bells for 33 years now and nothing's happened. Why should we move? It probably won't happen.
Well, the point is the wreck, what we found, it's laying on its side, on its port side. And it is degrading and it's biologically imploding. It's now been down there well over 80 years. Another point of interest, too, is that it was the first ship sunk by enemy action in World War II, because the Japanese weren't in the war at that stage, and the Germans came out here in secrecy and laid 228 mines across the entrance to Auckland, and so the Niagara hit the mines, and nowadays, of course, we've got big concern, especially up in the Pacific Islands, of a lot of the wartime wrecks there leaking oil. And there's a lot of investigation going on at the moment and surveys. In fact, there's some of our associate divers from Auckland here at the moment up in truck doing a survey on the Japanese fleet there. And there's a lot of concern there, whereas here we are in New Zealand, we've got the first ship sunk in the war sitting here, and nobody is even attempting to do a survey at this stage. Well, none of the authorities are. So we feel that, it is a high-risk wreck, and it is biologically imploding. It's subject to other corrosive action from the ocean. You get earthquakes out there. So the ship laying on its side is degrading. And we've seen, over the years, we've been exploring the wreck, we have seen it deteriorating, large structural parts collapsing. And in time, that ship is going to collapse. As I say, it's laying on its side. It's going to collapse in, and if this oil, as we think, is still in some of the tanks, it could be suddenly released as quite an eruption of oil.
If that back half of the ship contains the oil that we think it might, it could contain up to 1,600 tonnes of oil. And it's not the petrol you get out of the service station. This is heavy furnace, slick, thick tar oil.
1,600 tonnes.
1,600 tonnes.
So how much did the Rena have?
So the Rena, by comparison, had 300 tonnes. Yeah. Now, the experts will say that not all of the 1,600 tonnes, if indeed there is that much, would go at once, but it does put it into comparison that the Rena, which cost $47 million just for the cleanup, not to mention the devastation for the surrounding area, is far, far smaller than the potential risk here from the Niagara.
It was our worst in maritime environmental disaster. Early in the morning, the MV Rena slammed into the Astrolabe Reef off Tauranga. 350 tonnes of oil leaked into the sea, blanketing the coastline in black sludge, killing marine life and native birds.
What we have here is a risk where it could be low. There is a chance that all the oil has slowly seeped out over many years. We know from divers that have been down there that they see a slick of oil, like a little kind of wisp, a few centimetres long, escaping the wreck every 5 seconds or so. This is still happening right now. But it could hold up to 1,600 tonnes. And if that oil was released en masse in that northern part of the Hauriki Gulf, it would be absolutely catastrophic. I cannot underscore how significant that